The glory of God is the human person fully alive. Welcome to Back to the Father, a show about the journey of life and our final end.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this first ever edition. I hope there are going to be many more. I hope this isn't the last one. It's called Back to the Father, and we are broadcasting today across the social media platforms of the Guadalupe Radio Network. And welcome to this initial show. I'm so excited for reasons I'll explain in just a minute. My name is Dave Palmer. You've heard me on GRN Alive and on some of the local programs here in North Texas. I serve as executive director of our Guadalupe Radio Network station in North Texas, and I am delighted to be with you for this next hour on Back to the Father. I'll explain the title of the show here in just a minute. I want first, though, to introduce my co-host, who really has no idea what I'm going to be throwing at her during this next hour.
Yeah, why did I sign up for this again?
I don't know. You know, this is your first day full time.
It is.
Wow, what a kind of being thrown to the lions, kind of like on the lion's den, right?
It is. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah,
it gives me to grow a little bit.
The first thing I want to say is, this is an interactive program. The more you interact, the more you ask questions, the more you say, I have no idea, Palmer, what you're talking about. Please explain that again.
Please.
The better. And this is a program that when I tell you it's about the Summa Theologica, when I tell you it's about St. Thomas Aquinas, when I tell you it's about Thomistic philosophy, what is your first reaction? If you want to, since you're watching on social media, put the first word that comes to your mind when you think of the Summa Theologica, when you think of Thomistic philosophy, when you think of Middle Age philosophy, the age of scholasticism, okay? And Sissel is busily monitoring our social media platforms. I don't know how many people, if it's just my mom and my wife watching, or if we got a few other people, but again, let me know what you think, because I'll tell you what impact studying the Summa had on me. So Sissel being my test audience here, when you think of Summa Theologia, when you think of Thomistic philosophy, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
You, Dave.
I am Thomistic philosophy, huh?
Well, to be fair, I mean, I wasn't raised Catholic. I've only been Catholic for 4 years, so I'm constantly learning new things. And I honestly, the term Thomistic philosophy, I don't think I heard until I started working here with you, because you, of course, obviously within the first 2 minutes of me meeting you, probably mentioned it.
And there is a funny story about this as well, because you know what I'm talking about,
yeah,
right?
With Willem.
Sissel has this wonderful brother who currently is a freshman at the University of Dallas, a new sponsor on the Guadalupe Radio Network, by the way.
Nice plug.
And he was here just innocently doing some schoolwork one day, and we played a trick on him, and Sissel said, Dave wants to do an interview with you, and he said, what's it about? And you'll find out when you get there. So Willem sits down, and I said, you know, here's Willem Anderson, and today we'll be talking about the Summa Theologica. And I started asking him questions about what his favorite part is and what he likes about it. And it was all a joke. It never broadcast. And it was just something that we kind of had some fun with.
It was amazing. It went on for like 4 minutes, too. And my brother did the best he could to answer those very diplomatically.
And we still have that, by the way.
We do. Maybe it will come up.
Yeah, maybe so. You never know. But I also do not want to be remiss in thanking Diane Xavier, because Diane Xavier is the lady behind the scenes in all this, and she set up, you know, this is the dress rehearsal, and there's probably going to be a few mistakes, mostly by the host, but if it's not technologically perfect, or Sissel won't mess up, but if by any chance she does, forgive us, because this is our first go, and eventually this is going to be on the radio, but it's kind of fun to do just social media, because, you know, we're just testing this out. So anyways, when I think of the Summa Theologia, I think it is a blueprint that helps us in our journey of life, that guides us to our final end. Okay, and I'm going to tell you more about this, and we're going to be spending the next hour basically me trying to convince you to spend an hour a week studying the Summa with me, okay? And it's going to be slow, and it's going to be methodical, and it's going to be fun, and there's not going to be a lot of, you know, let's open up our Summa to Article 1 and a lot of reading. Most of it's done through pictures. In fact, if you are watching, of course, as you are on the social media platforms, we're going to put a PowerPoint presentation up, and so we'll have some visuals, and that should help you as well. One of my favorite quotes. What's your favorite quote by St. Irenaeus, Sissel?
Amen.
Amen. Okay. St. Irenaeus said, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. Okay. I wrote a book and I put that in the back of it. When I first heard that quote from St. Irenaeus, it immediately resonated with me because I think every person desires to be fully alive. I mean, is there a single person out there that's like, nah, I want to be half alive. I don't want to be fully alive, okay? We just had a gentleman in our studio an hour or so ago who's literally in hospice. He is dying of brain cancer, and I would describe him as fully alive because the guy had hope. The guy had a smile. He was joking around, and I don't know how many days he has to live. So despite our circumstances or what's going on in our life, we all want to be fully alive. The Greek philosopher Aristotle said the one thing all people have in common, without exception, is what? Do you want to take a stab at it, Sissel? What is the one thing every single person, living, dead, future, past, has in common, other than being a person? What would you say?
One thing they have in common? Oh, my goodness. I'm probably going to go so wrong with this.
That's all right. That's why you're here.
That's why
okay?
I'm here. I'm here to voice. Okay, I would say that we're all born with the original sin, and we're all headed towards our death.
Well, yeah,
really dark.
Yeah, so that's,
Sorry.
when I say the one thing all people have in common, there's actually more than one thing.
Okay,
but
I was
what he was getting at is everybody wants to be happy.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody wants to be
that's
happy.
very true.
But we're not all happy. In fact, a lot of people are very unhappy. So if there's one thing we desire, but we're not all achieving it, we got to ask ourselves, what is the secret sauce? What is the formula? And what makes the difference? Okay, how do we become fully alive? What makes the difference? Well, happiness is called beatitude. And beatitude, as St. Thomas Aquinas explains in the Summa, is God. Okay, so our happiness is God. Our end is God. And Thomas would say coming to know God is our beatitude. So then you got to ask yourself, okay, well, in the 60, 70 years that I'm living here on earth, if I'm not happy, well, then apparently I'm not doing something that's getting me to my goal of coming to know God. And the cool thing about the Summa is that, like I said, it's a blueprint to help us on our daily journey to have little bits of what Thomas would call participation in that happiness. Okay, we'll never be fully happy here on earth, but we can participate in that happiness to a certain degree, and in some cases, a very large degree, okay? And there's a lot of elements to it. There's a lot of grace involved. There's sacraments. There's gifts of the Holy Spirit, but there's also things that we can do just in our natural life, okay? Thomas actually talks about, he doesn't mention like hot fudge sundaes, but how eating a hot fudge sundae or drinking a cup of coffee or seeing a sunset or playing with your kid brother or going to the beach or any activity that we do, he says, tends to our final end, okay? So our final end is God. Our final end is coming to know the Father, and every single momentary action of our life gets us there if we orient our life in that direction, okay?
That makes it sound so simple, because some of the comments, we had a few people who had commented about what they think of with the Summa. We have Paula said heavy with lots of exclamation points. Teresa says deep, and Carla says reflective.
Oh, okay.
So those are all things, but when you explain it like that, it's like, oh, it's little simple things.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to think I can do this day.
I had a mystical experience as I was reading the Summa when I was going through it the first time, and I had a fish aquarium in our living room.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I looked at that fish aquarium, and I started looking at it in a different way that I'd never seen before. And by the way, I thank Diane for her work. That opener for the show that you just saw, that is all Sissel, because Sissel has a degree in film, and in addition to starting at the Guadalupe Radio Network full-time, she has a great talent for doing film, and so thank you for that.
Of course.
And you notice what was in that opener. You had pictures of nature. You mentioned Carla watching. Carla is our dear friend and volunteer who loves nature, and she puts pictures of birds and
Gorgeous
beautiful
pictures.
things and sunsets. And so the thing that you're going to get out of this show, hopefully, if I'm successful and if we don't mess things up too much, is that you're going to learn to experience daily life differently. And your experience with sunsets and clouds and birds and your fellow man is going to be different. Not because of anything I say, but because of the angelic doctor. And the reason that Thomas Aquinas wrote the Summa in the first place is to help us get back to the Father. Now, wouldn't that be a good name for a show?
That would be amazing. Why didn't we think of this, Dave?
Yes.
You know what's funny? I'm kind of getting the idea that St. Thomas Aquinas wrote the original, like, self-help book like a long time ago, but like in a Christian perspective. Like, obviously self-help books can be full of lots of nonsense, but it's kind of like he's telling you how to, because what are self-help books about usually? Happiness.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a good point. That's a good point. Now, that's how I saw it. I want to see. Okay, so I'm putting the first slide up there. So now we can take a break because we're not actually on camera anymore.
Okay. I can like slouch now and everything.
Yeah. And anyways, this is the Summa Theologia. All right. And when Paula said heavy, this is what most people think.
Oh my
goodness! It's 5 volumes. It's huge. And 631 questions, 3,000 articles, 10,000 objections and answers. And this is, you should see the look on Sissel's face right now. This is what most people think, but I'll tell you my story. And again, let me bring us back on here. Okay, we're back on. About 10 years ago, I, for a number of reasons, felt inspired to go to the local Catholic bookstore and buy the Summa, okay? And there's a lot of reasons. I won't get into all of it, okay? So I go over to Sacred Heart Catholic Books, and I walked in, and it wasn't like, I think I'll flip through it and see if I'm interested. I was just like, I feel so inspired to read this. I want to buy it, the 5 volumes. And Janet Petrucci was the manager at the time, and she said she was waiting for the movie to come out. Okay, she said, I'm not going to read the Summa. And I said, well, you may be waiting for a while.
That's great.
And so she's waiting for the movie. And so I got home, and my dear wife Paula, who you just quoted a moment ago as saying heavy, had to bear with me over the next 9 months, staying up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, reading the Summa, and her saying, please go to bed, turn off the lights, I want to get some sleep. And it absolutely mesmerized me. It absolutely fascinated with me. So some of those words you used, like heavy and deep, or what were the other ones?
We had heavy, deep, reflective, and also Reg just commented groovy, which I love that word. Yeah. I don't think that's the normal one you think of when you think of...
Yeah, I think like Partridge Family, or that's before your time.
No, David Cassett, I know it well.
Yeah, groovy, the 1970s and all that. And so what I did was I went home and I started reading it, and it absolutely delighted me. And I always tell people say, should I read the Summa? And I say, don't go buy it because it's too expensive for something you're just gonna collect dust. I go online, and it's free online. You can find it. Read an article or two, maybe a few questions. Okay, read a few questions, and if you don't enjoy it, don't keep reading it. But I do think that everybody should learn the Summa. Okay, you may not be reading the Summa, primary source, but you should do something like listen to this show, or there's a lot.
There's a reason why there's Dave Palmers in the world. Exactly. I just like how you went to the Catholic store and bought this huge book to like, I'm just going to read this. I go to the Catholic store and I flip through and I'm like, oh, this one only has 4-page chapters. Fantastic.
That's for me. A little daily reflections.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm like, because I have a chronic illness of only reading the first 4 chapters of a Catholic book and putting it down and forgetting about it and starting a new one.
I've got a book right now on my side table that has like 10 pages remaining, and I can't quite get myself to read those final 10 pages. Maybe I just don't like it to end. So anyways, I felt as I went through this first reading of the Summa, it took me 9 months, I kept saying, God, there's some reason why I'm doing this, because this is kind of crazy. Because, people who aren't like, I'm not like some towering intellect, people like me don't just pick up the Summa and start reading it. And so I knew early on that there is some reason why God wanted me to read the Summa. And I knew very early on that I was taught, I need to teach it. I need to pass it on because I'm getting so much joy out of this. I'm enjoying it so much that I want to pass it along to other people. And my first thought was, I want kids to learn this. I had very young children at the time, and I thought, you know what, this isn't as complicated as everybody makes it. It's actually kind of simple, and maybe this can be taught to kids. So I wrote a book called St. Thomas Aquinas for Everyone, 30 quick and fun lessons, activities, and outdoor adventures based on the Summa Theologia. I remember one time I was interviewed by Anna Mitchell with the Sunrise Morning Show, and it was about the book, and she made a comment, and she said, that subtitle of the book, she said, when most people think of the Summa, the first words that come to their mind aren't quick and fun.
That is so true, though.
So I'm always trying to just make people think of a different approach to the Summa, think about it differently. And that's what I want to convince you of today. So another interesting thing happens that shortly after I got the Summa and got obsessed with it and started reading it, there's a gentleman in my parish named Walter Crawford, and he runs a company called Homeschool Connections. They basically offer online classes for high school kids. And he said, would you like to teach a class? And I said, yeah, sure. And so that forced me to create a class on the whole Summa. And I think this is my 6th year now that I've done it. And the cool thing is that the kids enjoy it.
That is just, I mean, not to put it like St. Thomas Aquinas down or anything like that, but that's amazing. It's a credit to you, too, that you're able to make it that they are like, this is amazing. You know, I mean, that's a...
Yeah,
the last thing I would think would, because, you know, high schoolers are a particular group of people to teaching, too. Yeah. And I help with our young youth ministry at my church and stuff like that. And it's a very unique crowd to teach things to. And so the fact that they love the Summa is amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I've had 13-year-olds in my class.
Wow.
I've had, I think, a 12-year-old one time. And they go through the whole thing. And I tell them the same thing. I said, you know, there's a 24-week class. And I said, if you get through the whole thing, you're going to know more about the Summa Theologia than 99% of all Catholics, including adults, as a 13-year-old, as a 14-year-old. So I say the same thing to you. Now, this is going to be more kind of methodical, and I don't know how long it takes. It may take us 10 years to get the whole Summa if this show lasts that long.
Wait, did I just sign a 10-year contract? I don't know what I did here.
I'm going to be an old man by the time we finish this. And so I want to, and then I started a YouTube channel, and I tell you what, I got to give Toya Hall and Joe McLean some credit. I don't know if Joe and Toya are watching right now. Joe is, but Joe's the one, you know, I was doing GRN Live, and then we started alternating Fridays at GRN Live, and then he started Monday GRN Live, and now he's doing Catholic Drive Time, right? He's the first one that came to me and said, you know what, I want you to take what you've learned about the Summa, and I want you to use it for Guadalupe Radio Network. He said, we can do podcasts, we can do a show. And so, Joe, thank you. And of course, without Toya Hall and Len Oswald giving their thumbs up on it,
we would not be here.
This wouldn't happen.
Would not be here. We've been getting some pretty great comments, so can I just update you a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to take a sip of water and put our PowerPoint back on.
Perfect.
So, what are some comments?
So, Joe, our good friend Joe McLean said, I can feel my hair thinning just thinking about the Summa. LOL, just kidding. And then Teresa commented, she was in agreement with me, saying, I'm with her. Check out the length of the chapters when you're in the Catholic bookstore. And also, I think Reg came up with a pretty great St. Thomas Aquinas joke. He says, if you wrestle with the meaning of Aquinas' tome, does that make you a Summa wrestler? I'm sure you've never heard that one, Dave.
I actually have heard that one.
And Teresa said she never heard of it.
She's never heard of the Summa?
I'm assuming that's what she means. She says, I confess I've never heard of it. So that's great.
Yeah. So there's somebody listening to this show, watching this show, who has never heard of the Summa Theologia. And, you know, that's another thing. As we were trying to figure out the title of this show, I emailed Joe McLean and I said, hey, let's call it the Summa Show. And he said, no, I don't think a lot of people even know what the Summa is. I said, of course, everybody knows what the Summa is. But Teresa is proving that a lot of people don't know this. So anyways, the first thing we want to do is we want this to be interactive because, like I said, when I teach my high school kids, there's a chat room, and I'll tell you, I actually require them to chat. Okay, it's part of their grade.
Participation,
they have
gotta
to participate. So obviously, dear listener, dear viewer, you're not getting graded on this. And so, but the more you interact, the more Sissel can tell me what you're thinking. And we do appreciate very much, you being part of it. So
another never heard of it, Debbie, on Facebook as well. Has never heard of it.
Oh, so she's never heard
She's
the Summa
excited
Theologia.
to learn more, though.
Okay.
Well, no pressure, Dave.
Now, this is something that I always ask my students on the first day of class. I say, okay, so the Summa has 5 volumes. It has 631 questions, 3,000 articles, and 10,000 objections, okay, as you see on the screen here.
Wow.
So the question is, what would Thomas choose for his very first article? What's the first step?
All right.
Do you want to take a guess
I'm going to take a guess because I'm going to just go off of my
catechism. I'm actually going to put you on camera as you take this guess, okay?
Okay, so I'm just going off of my upbringing, thinking catechism. I'm going to say, who is God?
Okay.
That's my first,
Yeah. Now that's a really good guess.
But wrong.
I feel it's like Toya and I doing the fascinating facts, right? I say I really appreciate that guess.
It was a good effort.
It was really
Gold
good.
star for you.
And can we give her a participation medal? Please, Diane, can you get one of those?
Please.
Okay. No, actually, the truth be told, the second question of the Summa is, does God exist? Okay.
Gotcha.
And then
Okay.
the attributes of God, that he's perfect, and he's
Gotcha.
infinite, and he's he's good and he's simple and immutable and all that. Okay, but the very, very, very first. Does anybody want to take a guess?
Yeah, please. Anyone in the comments? I'd love to
so
see if anyone has any.
How do you think? Thomas sits down, and I'll tell you a little bit of biographical information about Thomas. He lived in the 13th century. Okay, Middle Ages. He was a Dominican priest. Interesting guy. Grew up in a kind of a privileged family. Highly intelligent. But so he sits down, and you figure you're going to do this opus that you had to figure was a pretty big deal. What's the first article? The very, very first article is he's basically the article says whether besides philosophy is any other science necessary. And I'm paraphrasing there. It's not the exact words.
Interesting. Okay, hold on.
You want to dissect that
please,
a little bit?
can we? So, besides philosophy, is any other science necessary?
Yeah. See, right now, everybody's like, okay, this is too deep. Okay, I was with you, Palmer, for the first 20 minutes, but now you're already confusing
Paula's guess
me, right?
was, can we know God? That was her first guess. That's also a good guess, I think.
That's in the first part of the Summa as well.
Okay, cool.
And what do you think the answer to that is? Can we know God?
Can we know God?
Just as a yes or no.
Just as a yes or no? Oh, goodness. Yes. I'm wrong again, aren't I?
No, that's like a 50-50, right?
50-50, I know. So did I blow it again?
No, you got it.
Oh,
you
sweet.
got it. Yes, absolutely, we can know God.
But, okay, I won't go deeper. I'm like, can you know God fully?
Yeah. Oh, good. It depends on your definition of fully.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can we comprehend him? No. Can we know him? Yes. More so in heaven
Gotcha.
than here.
That's what I was thinking, the comprehending part.
Yeah. All right. So the very first thing is basically he's saying, okay, our end that we're gonna get to is supernatural. Okay, this is how he does the first article of the Summa. Okay, so basically God creates us with a nature that is not able to achieve its end. Okay, end is a very important word in the Summa, by the way. Okay, I used to go through and circle every time Thomas wrote end. End pops up all the time. Our end is God, right? Our end is beatitude. And so he's asking the first one is that, okay, if our end is heaven, our end is God, our end is knowing God, can we by our nature get there by our own power? And he says no. Okay, which involves immediately a big conundrum because it's like, okay, so God, you've created us for something, an end that we can't achieve. That sounds like, having a kid and setting expectations for them that they can never achieve. That would be the very definition of cruelty, right? So God has destined us for an end
that we can't do by ourselves.
That we can't get there. So what's the solution?
I think what God needs to throw us a lifeline.
Exactly. God's got to help us. Okay, so let me go back to PowerPoint. And so that's kind of I always tell my students, I said, the first article of the Summa sets the entire stage. Okay, so back to the Father means that our goal, our purpose is to return to the Heavenly Father. We come from God, we end up with God, right? But we can't get there. And so the whole time, God, and I love your lifeline, okay? It's kind of like the life raft, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have an image that I like to use that I'm going to put up on the screen here that to me summarizes our life in relationship to God. Okay. You're not going to see it here. So here it is. Can you see that?
It's a boomerang.
Yeah. So what would a boomerang have to do with our life with God? Anybody want to guess? Anybody out there want to say, what is a boomerang? What is he talking about? How does this have to do with our life in relationship to God? Well, what's a boomerang do? Okay. So
I've never thrown one successfully, but the idea is that they're supposed to go away and come back to you. I have failed many times.
Yes.
But yeah.
Okay. So now you got it back to the Father.
Back.
Okay. So the boomerang originates with somebody throwing it out, and then if it achieves its proper end, it comes right back to its source. Right? Did anybody take any guesses? Or although I've already given the answer.
Yeah.
Right?
No guesses yet. Yeah.
All right.
Any other thoughts, though? Welcome.
Everybody is like absolutely stupefied by this. So okay, so we are the boomerang. All right, we are.
I've never been compared to a boomerang before, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so God throws us out, so to speak. All right, and then if we orient our lives right, we are going to come back to God. So our entire life is from God and to God. And the theologians who are much smarter than I am have these terms called exodus and reditus. Okay, you'll hear a lot when people, like really smart people, talk about the Summa. We exit from God and we return to God. Okay, so what you got to do, dear listener, is that you have to start thinking about your life as the 2 points at the beginning and the end of your life are the same thing. Okay, the beginning is God and the end is God. And you are a boomerang. Okay.
Can we get a T-shirt with that, please? You are a boomerang. That's a great conversation starter. You're just in line at the grocery store.
Yeah, you are a boomerang. And they're like, and then all of a sudden they've unwittingly gotten themselves into a
deeper discussion
and they're
than
like saying, I need to get to another line. Okay, so do you think we all understand? Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you understand?
Debbie says she loves the analogy, so I think it is a good one.
So now we're going to move on to another analogy. Okay, here's another one. I'm going to just put this up on the screen. I'm not going to say anything, but I want you, dear viewer, dear listener, dear Sissel, dear Paula, dear Carla and Teresa and everybody else, Debbie, to tell me how does this image relate to God? It's kind of similar, but it's a little bit different.
Another thing I'm bad at.
Can you see it?
It's a target, right?
It's an archer.
Archer.
Yeah. And now this is interesting because did you know that Joe McClain, if you see him,
yes, he does archery.
Joe's like dedicated like YouTube channels to archery. So Joe should get this one. Joe may be like, okay, I think I'm out of here. But if he's still watching, what does this have to do with our life? And who is the archer? What is the target? And what is the arrow? Okay.
I'm interested. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to let someone else take a swing at that one because, actually. Hold on. Let me think about this. I'm getting sent back to my Sunday school days. I feel like we had a similar analogy.
Okay.
All right.
And this is and unlike the boomerang, this is one that Thomas uses in the Summa.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. This isn't just me. Thomas. I don't even think boomerangs have been invented.
I was going to ask, were boomerangs around when St. Thomas Aquinas was around? The real questions we should be asking
Where's
here.
our fact checker when we
You know
need
what?
him,
That's
right?
what we should do every week, Dave. Is just do a St. Thomas Aquinas fact. This was not around when St. Thomas was around.
Yeah. I think the internet.
The internet wasn't around?
Okay.
Oh my God. No one has taken.
Okay.
Joe McClain has given we got a few ideas. Okay. Joe McClain's given a Bible verse, but first I'm going to say Debbie. Debbie said he's our target. We can aim for him and get there. Archer is me, arrow is our path, and target is God.
Okay.
So that's an interesting one. I have a slightly different one.
Okay.
Let's see. Joe McClain has given 1 Corinthians 10:31, which obviously off the top of my head, I totally know what he's talking about. It's a good former Protestant that I was.
Oh, really?
No,
okay.
I don't. No, it's give all glory to. So whatever you eat or drink or whatever you do all glory of God.
Okay.
So I like Debbie's, but my thought, Dave, is, and you can again tell me how wrong I am.
On a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
We are, I'm second guessing myself. I'm going to say that we are the arrow.
Okay.
Jesus is the bow, or Jesus is the bowman.
Okay.
And
Archer, bowman, yeah.
Yeah, Archer, bowman. And then the target is God, heaven.
Okay, you're pretty much right on.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So the target is heaven. The archer is, you said Jesus. Jesus, of course, is God.
Right.
So God shoots us, so to speak, to the target, and he's pointed us to our end, and he kind of throws us out into the world, and he's directing us. Okay, there's a really fancy word called teleology. Okay, and it's basically
the history and the study of tea.
Exactly. No.
Teleology.
Teleology, T-E-L-E-O-L-O-G, something like that.
Okay.
Teleology means telos is the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so God directs us to our end. And the interesting thing about all this is that, like with your pet dog,
yes,
God guides your dog, your cat, or a tree to its end, but the end is isn't voluntary. They have no choice of how they're going to end up, right?
Right.
But we can mess it up. Okay, God
We really can mess it up.
shoots us to that destination, that target. But God's given us free will.
We can follow the wind.
Yeah.
Just go
so
slide off.
So we can say, and fall away from that target. Okay. So again, this is an image that pops up in the Summa quite frequently, and that is the archer. Okay, the archer's God, the target's God. And
we're in the middle.
We're in the middle. And the other thing is with teleology, and this is kind of the cool thing. Okay, I'm going to take that image off, and I'm going to pop us back on so you can see that we're still here. Hello. The cool thing is, let me ask you this, Sissel, just a question. If you were walking around at a park and you looked up and you saw a kite,
okay,
or you saw a drone, or you saw one of those kind of mechanical airplanes, like that. Let's just take any one of them, okay? The mechanical airplanes flying around. What would you do? Like, what's your kind of natural? If you
look for the person controlling it.
Exactly.
Immediately, you're like, who's doing that? And I think you're going to hit a tree.
Yeah, exactly. So you immediately see an effect and you look for the cause, right? Okay. So that good answer, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a 10 out of 10 on that one, okay?
Oh, am I getting graded on this?
Have you ever seen ducks flying south for the winter?
I mean,
yeah,
I think I have. It's Texas, so it's a little hard. I feel like we are the South sometimes, but yes,
okay.
yeah, I have.
You ever seen you ever like the photosynthesis process? Not that you can see that, or composting, or that kind of thing. Have you ever stopped? Let's just take the ducks. I see ducks all the time. Diane, have you ever seen ducks flying south? Okay. Have you ever had that same thought as the mechanical airplane and said to yourself, I wonder what's moving them? Okay. I wonder who's calling the shots here? Because the ducks are not saying, you know what, I think I'll fly south.
Right.
Okay. They're not making decisions.
Interesting.
Okay. So everything, and this is teleology, everything is being moved to an end. All right. So when I learned this, I'm saying, okay, everything is different now because every sunrise, every sunset, every cloud moving, every ant pile, everything I see, you, Sissel Anderson, are being moved to an end, okay? Do you get hungry without you thinking about it? Do you get tired because you're not thinking about it? There's certain things that we don't control. We're being moved to a good outside of our being able to say, no, I don't want to be hungry today. Okay, I think I'm going to stop being hungry. Right?
Man.
Okay, is that deep?
It's deep, but it's not. I mean, it is because it's making us like pay attention to our everyday life. Because when I see the ducks, I usually stop and think, I wonder where they were flying over just before. Like where did they come from? Where was their home originally?
Yeah.
But to go a step further and be like, okay, how did they come across like flying this way? Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the way I've been living for the last 10 years of my life. It's like every time I think, I say, this tells me something about God because God is directing these ducks. Okay. And it's a different way of living. And it really makes life kind of exciting. Again, getting back to St. Irenaeus and the glory of God is the human person fully alive. So let me go back to PowerPoint.
Can I ask a silly question?
Hey, that's what this is all about. And
Saint
by the way, if anybody listening or watching
has a question, please.
Even
I'm
if
watching
it's silly, please ask it.
Saint Irenaeus, can you give me a little background on? I've heard his name, but can you?
You had to ask.
No. Okay, I mean just general.
I know a little bit about him. I bet you Joe McLean knows a lot more about him than I do. But early church.
Okay.
I'm guessing certainly first 2-3 centuries of the church. Brilliant apologist, brilliant theologian. Beyond that, I got to claim ignorance.
Okay, but that's better than what I knew. I just looked him up, so I'm going to look into him. I have to catch up on. I wasn't raised Catholic. I have all these little kids I know go to All Saints parties, and they're all dressed up as these randoms like Saint Drogo, and I'm like, I didn't get to do that, so I have no idea who some of these saints are. So now everyone knows.
I just put up a picture, and by the way, I love the questions, and I really, really appreciate it, and especially if I don't know the answer, because then I can go running and trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
All right, here's a picture of St. Thomas Aquinas, and the only reason I put this up here is because he looks really serious, and he looks very, very intellectual, and there's a really great story about one of St. Thomas's confessors, because of course he was a priest, but priests go to confession, and the confessor said, when I hear St. Thomas Aquinas' confession, it's as if it's a child speaking to me, and it's basically he's saying there's a simplicity about him. And that's why I never liked the pictures of St. Thomas Aquinas because they always make him look so serious.
Right.
And there's a quote by G.K. Chesterton I'm going to put up in a moment that I think describes. I think Aquinas would have lived with such amazing zeal and zest and fervor that I think every day would have been just an amazing ride for him, and for reasons I'll explain in a second. But anyways, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying it's kind of comforting to hear, that St. Thomas Aquinas' confessions sound like a child, because sometimes you think when you're going into confession, you're like, I got to make this an essay. I got to make this, concise. It has to explain exactly what my sin was, and so it's kind of good to know that you are just talking to God ultimately, and He is our Father.
Yeah.
So we're probably everything we say, it sounds like a child to God.
we
Honestly,
sound pretty
God's probably
childish.
looking down every time we do some brilliant new invention. God's like, oh, aren't you so cute? He's like,
pats us on the head.
He's like, been there, done that.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, I put a picture up of the screen, and my wife would know exactly what this is. I don't know if can you see it?
Is it the picture of the beach?
Yeah, this is.
Oh, is this from your vacation?
This is St. Augustine Beach in St. Augustine, Florida. This is my happy place, and whenever I start teaching the Summa, I ask students, or I'll ask people who are watching this right now, think of your happiest place that you can possibly imagine on earth. Okay. So I'll talk for a second, let you think amongst yourselves for a second. But everybody in my family knows St. Augustine, Florida. I love it, and it's my favorite place to be. It's my favorite place to vacation. Absolutely love it. The fact that it's named after the great St. Augustine doesn't hurt at all. And so I just love it. And we've been there a number of times. And the reason I put this up there is that we all have places here on earth that we just love to go. It's kind of a paradise for us, right? And when I think about it, it makes me happy. It makes me comfortable, but on a very natural level, okay? But I also think that we got to be thinking about our final end. I mentioned that in the Summa, Thomas uses the word end all the time. Teleology, okay, everything being directed towards our end. We have to live our lives always thinking about the end. I mentioned the hot fudge sundae, the latte, okay? I tell my students, everything we do tends toward the end. Now, that doesn't mean that you got to be so serious and think, oh my gosh, I better drink this latte.
No.
But because it's a good and it participates in the goodness of God, everything we do, doesn't that change the way you see your life? Okay, so another thing that I want to point out that's really cool about the Summa, and the reason why I can't imagine that Thomas would ever be like this real serious guy, is that the teachings in the Summa are like crazily optimistic. Okay, crazily
I like
optimistic.
that, though, because
okay,
I have a tendency of being that way.
Is be optimistic.
I have a tendency of I tend to be exactly what everyone else is not. I have that tendency if everyone's being.
That sounds kind of contrary.
It is, isn't it? I do think maybe it's like my subconscious. I'm going to be contrary, but like my teenage years still coming back and going like I got to do what is everyone else is not doing. But if everyone else is feeling super down, I'm like, it's okay, guys. Yeah.
There's one of the more kind of. I guess challenging parts of the Summa at the beginning is he says that being and goodness are synonymous. Okay, so being has to do with existence. Okay. So basically, what he's saying is that everything that exists is good. Okay. Because if it wasn't good, it wouldn't exist. Okay. Now that flies in the face of everything. Well, you're like, well, what about ISIS? What about the devil? What about,
that opens up a whole door of
horrific stuff, okay? But everything that exists, that doesn't mean every action is good.
But the existence of it is good.
But the cause of every action is good without exception. Okay? The cause of every action is nobody does anything other than for a good or a perceived good. Okay? Now that's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting, and I'm getting way ahead of myself. All right, I have up on screen here that I'm going to show you. And by the way, If you're watching and you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube or Twitter, let me know if this is making sense for you so far. I really need to know. I'll hear from my wife tonight when I get home. I think my mom is watching, and she'll say it was just kind of, I didn't understand it. But let us know any questions you have, because like I said, the more interactive this is, the better. And this is some pretty heavy stuff, but I want it to be kind of fun. So here's a picture of, the show's called Back to the Father. Mm-hmm. Here's a picture of what most people think of. I don't know. What do you think of when you think of father? You've got a really great earthly father. Mm-hmm. And so you probably have a real positive image of the father. What do you think of?
Oh, like just looking or aspects, or just
word association. When you think of father,
I think
or maybe an image.
Fathers is like kind of a rock. I think of them as very the first person you call when something goes wrong.
When the car breaks down.
Exactly.
Or something. Yeah.
When something goes wrong, as someone who you can go to. I think of protection.
Yeah.
I think those sort of aspects are kind of what I think of.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. Well, and this image I have on the screen is good, but I want to also put this one up. I recently bought a big, image for my home office of this Michelangelo picture of, it's called The Creation of Adam. Mm-hmm. Okay. And God, of course, is creating Adam. Did you ever know? My wife actually pointed this out. Do you know who God has his arm around in this picture? Do you see that? Do you know?
I have done a lot of
studies of this.
Yeah, please.
Right
I want to see if anyone else thinks, because I've read a lot of studies on this.
But my wife, Paula, told me this, and I think she's right. If somebody can correct me if I'm not wrong, but who does God have his left arm around in this picture?
I've heard a lot of theories. I don't know which one is true.
Give me a theory. What do you think?
Okay, this is going to sound bad. My sister studied art history, so a theory I think some art historians have is that Michelangelo was not fond of painting the Sistine Chapel because he had been doing it for a while, and that he might have done something in spite and just drawn a woman there.
Okay.
That's not the. I think that's just like a theory, secular theory.
I think it's Eve.
Okay, see that was going to be my guess possibility. Oh, you see, Adrian said Eve.
Okay,
you got it.
Yeah, so I never realized that. I thought it was an angel because he's surrounded.
That would make more. Yeah,
he's surrounded by angels, and then of course Adam has his. And notice Adam's finger is kind of almost limp. Mm-hmm. And God, and I'm going to zero in on God's face here in a second, okay? But this picture, when I started looking at this just about a week ago, I said, there is so much here that we can look at in relation to St. Thomas Aquinas. Now, of course, Michelangelo lived centuries after Aquinas. He would have been influenced by Aquinas, but I think he was like maybe, 15th, 16th century, Michelangelo. But I believe it's Eve around God's left arm, and God is reaching out to Adam. Now, look at the look in Adam's face, and then look at the look in God's face. Okay? Now I'm going to zero in on God. And that is a look of a determined person, so to speak. And right. God the Father is a person, of course. And when I think about this determination for God to create man and draw us back, I think this is a good image to have. God desperately wants us to return to him. And as we move through the Summa, one thing I want to highlight is that he's going out of his way to make it easy for us. Okay, it's that darn original sin that gets in the way, that makes us, kind of pull away. But if you look in his eyes right there, that is a determined father. Okay, that is a father. Now, of course, this is creation. All right, I'm going to go back to the big picture now. And then you look at Adam, and Adam's kind of like,
It's not pulling his weight.
No. But that's a great image. And Eve actually looks kind of concerned. I think she's like, Adam, will you please take this more seriously?
She's like, come on.
Come on. And by the way, one of the cool things, and again, I don't know what pace we're going to do this, but eventually in the first part of the Summa, there's a big section in the Summa about the angels. And I'll throw this out to you and our viewers, listeners right now. Thomas is called the angelic doctor, and there's different theories of why he's called that. I tend to think it's because his mind was almost angelic. The angels are smarter than us.
Sure.
All right. But he also wrote a lot about the angels. The angels, that part of the Summa is really fascinating because you say, why did God need to create angels? Why not just man and puppy dogs and salamanders and birds and why did God have to create angels? Does anybody want to take a guess as to why? Of course, I have my theories, and I think I'm right. And Thomas asks in the Summa, did he need to create angels?
Does he answer it as well? Or does he just ask?
That just asked a whole bunch of questions. But see if anybody wants to take a guess at that.
Okay. Adrian says because of his purity.
Okay, because of whose purity? The
angels? I have no idea actually. Yeah. Adrian, you got to clarify for me.
And again, I don't think there's any necessarily right or wrong answers. But if you think about it, you've got different levels of creatures. You've got, the earthworm. Okay, first of all, you got the plants.
Right.
And they have only what Thomas would call vegetative souls. Right. They can't feel anything. They can't think. They can't move. And then you move up to the sensitive souls, which would be your dogs and your salamanders and your earthworms and snakes and orangutans. And then I'm going to skip man, and then you go up to the angels who don't have a body, but they're pure spirit, right? Mm. And then right in between the dog and the earthworm and the angels is man. So we've got the body like the dog and the spiritual soul, and angels don't have souls, by the way. We have the spirit like an angel, so we're right in between. So,
gotcha.
So God is so far above us and so beyond us that what he did was he put this intermediary level in, the angels, that we can get to know a little bit easier because they are intellect, they are will like God, but they're also, they were created, they're creatures, right? And there's, and they also, so there's, we have a lot in common with the brute creatures, and then we have a lot in common with the angels, and we're right in between. Okay, so we're kind of in this middle land, right?
Yeah, and Adrian, by the way, he was saying angelic doctor because of his purity. That's what he was saying. It was Thomas Aquinas. The delay messed me up a little bit there.
I think Adrian's actually right about that. There's an interesting story, and I'm going to get to this. Adrian, by the way, I think was in Dominican seminary for a while, so Adrian probably knows a lot about Dominican spirituality. Okay, a little bit about Thomas Aquinas, and please, we only have about 10 more minutes, right, Diane? 10 more minutes.
We have a question, by the way, whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's go to the question. Okay, I just want to honor if anybody asks a question. Yes.
Our dear friend Carla asks, is the Summa based on any other writing, and why was it written?
Oh, okay.
It's a very good question.
Yeah. Now, those are two different questions, and I'm going to bring
tackle whichever one.
I'm going to bring us back on here, so you can see us again. Hi. The Summa is absolutely based on other writings. Okay, Thomas, as you'll see on that graphic that I just showed a second ago, lived in the 13th century. Interestingly, the 13th century was the time of Christendom. It was the Middle Ages. A lot of people look back very idealistically at that time. Of course, there were a lot of problems. There always are a lot of problems. But I think it was a good time for the church. Okay, this was the age of Bonaventure. In fact, did you know that Bonaventure, I bet Adrian knows this, Bonaventure was a Franciscan. Thomas was a Dominican. Do you know that they went to school together?
What kind of school? Like their lower school?
No, not like kindergarten.
Kindergarten together. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, I should. Okay. They went to the University of Paris together.
Oh, wow.
And they graduated. What? And if I'm wrong on this, Adrian, you let me know. But they graduated together. So can you imagine being like the third guy in that class? It's like, I wanted to be the valedictorian, but by God, I got this Thomas Aquinas in my class, and then I got Bonaventure. And so anyways, I'm going really off track here, but what was I getting at here? So my point is that, to answer Carla's question, absolutely Thomas relied on so many, not only Christians, but Greek philosophers. In fact, one of the probably the person that he quotes the most in the Summa after Scripture is Aristotle. He quotes Augustine a lot. He quotes Aristotle. Aristotle, well, he had no chance of being a Christian because he lived 300 years before Christ, okay? So he has a pretty good excuse for not being a Christian. Aristotle was the great Greek philosopher, lived about 300 BC. He was a student of Plato. And Thomas leaned heavily on Aristotle, heavily on Plato, heavily on Damascene, Pseudo-Dionysius. Interestingly also, Islamic, Muslim, and Jewish philosophers. Jerome, Origen, Irenaeus. And so basically what Thomas did, he once said that he never forgot anything he read. So Thomas was a voracious reader, as most intelligent people are, and he remembered everything. He only lived to be 49 years old. Okay, he did all this writing in the Summa and everything before he died at 49. And so, yes, Thomas absolutely, all he did really was synthesize everything. And why did he write it? He actually explains that at the beginning of the Summa. He said that he thought that he, first of all, wrote it for beginners, okay? But
really?
a beginner to him would have been like Adrian when he was in formation for the Dominicans, okay? It didn't mean, and it probably would have only been for men. It would have been probably for seminarians, people at university level, which at that time probably would have been more of the privileged class, right? But it was not, of course, this is 13th century. This was before the printing press, and there weren't like summas all over the place, right? So he wrote it for beginners. He wrote it for seminarians. He wrote it for college level, okay? So when we say beginners, it doesn't mean, like the first book. He also presumed in the Summa a knowledge, some pretty basic knowledge, okay? So any other questions? Or
no other questions. Got a couple good comments, though. Adrian, first off, says that this is the best show on the GRN. A little controversial, but I'll take it.
Seeing that he has a show on the GRN, I'm sure. And I will say, for those of you listening, 6 to 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday, Catholic Drive Time, I have caught all three of the shows, not the whole show of all of them, but I've saw it. This morning, I was preparing for our show, and I'm watching pretty much the whole thing. And so it was a great show, and Emily and Joe and Adrian do a great job. So he actually said this is the best show.
Yes. I mean, Joe may be talking to him.
He's a Dominican.
He has to.
Joe just put him in the corner for 5 minutes, I think.
It's okay, Adrian. We love you. Don't.
Okay.
Even if you lose your job, it's okay. We still love you.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, he gave a cool fact about Thomas and Bonaventure. He said, according to tradition, Thomas went to go see Bonaventure one time, and Bonaventure was levitating in ecstasy. So Thomas retorts, "I will leave a master at his work," and left.
Oh, wow. What a show off.
I know, right?
That's like sometimes I show up for work and, Sissel's levitating in the control room. And I'm like, Sissel.
And bilocating.
I was like, give it a break. Well, come on. You're just showing off. Well, Thomas also levitated. I'm not sure if he bilocated, but And okay, so here's some biographical information about the Summa. And by the way, I have a whole lot more slides I was going to use, but it's...
Sissel was here.
I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun. At least, hey, Adrian likes the show. I mean, gosh, we got one person.
Someone else, Loopy's watching. She says, caught the last few minutes, but she's very interesting.
All right. Thank you, Loopy. Appreciate it. Let us know where you're listening, what part of the network or even beyond. So let me just go through some of this here on the slideshow. As I mentioned, Thomas lived in the 13th century. He is not only a doctor of the church, among, I think there's like 35, 36 doctors of the church, but and they're very different. You got Therese Lisieux and Catherine Siena, Augustine, I think St. Anthony of Padua, I think is a doctor of the church, okay? He is a universal doctor. He's called the doctor of the doctors, all right? He is the common doctor, which he's kind of like the...
He's the head honcho.
Yeah, if you got all the doctors together, Thomas would be leading the conversation, okay? Patron of all Catholic universities and schools, as I mentioned, Dominican priest, mendicant. I bet, I don't want to put you on the spot too many times, but mendicant, do you want me to ask you or do you want me to just tell you?
Mendicant, tell me what the word means. Is that what you're asking?
It means they were beggars.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that, actually.
The Franciscans and the Dominicans were beggars, and Thomas came from a privileged family, and his family hated that he wanted to join this upstart, ragtag group of preachers, travelers, and that's why you see in this fourth bullet point, they locked him in his family castle for 18 months. Legend says that his brothers went and got a prostitute and put it, you should see the look on Sissel's face. And I think it's true. Legend says they got a prostitute and they put it up in the tower because they wanted him to lose his vocation to the Dominicans.
Wow.
And by falling into unchastity. And I think when Adrian said a moment ago that he's called the angelic doctor, legend also has it that he picked up like a firebrand or something, like something from the fire, and he chased the prostitute out. And at that moment, God gave him the gift of chastity.
Wow.
Where he was no longer tempted. And one of the things that Thomas says in the Summa, and I'm kind of going all over the place, is that the more attracted we are to sensual desires, like the more you think about banana splits and sleep and, your next, physical pleasure, the less you can focus on the spiritual life. That's not to say the physical pleasures are bad, but I think what God gave Thomas Aquinas was an ability to not have. Now, it's interesting because he was known to be a pretty rotund guy.
Sure.
And so you're like, okay, he didn't have a draw to these things, so why was he so big? I mean, that's another issue. But anyways, so he did have a special gift because I think God's saying, I need you to write the Summa, and I don't want you to be thinking about earthly pleasures all the time. All right, he was a student of Albert the Great. He was called the Dumb Ox. Have you ever heard that? He was called the Dumb Ox.
Really?
That was his nickname.
The Dumb Ox, the guy who wrote the Summa Theologica, is called
Do
the
you know
Dumb Ox.
why he was called? Maybe somebody watching knows. Why was he called the Dumb Ox?
The Dumb
And
Ox.
I'm going to let you see the perplexed look on Sissel Anderson's face. Okay?
I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, so was it intended as an insult, or was it like a? Because I can call my friends silly names.
It was his classmates that called him Dumb Ox.
His
Yeah, and I don't think they meant it in a flattering way. If somebody called you a dumb ox, would you?
I wouldn't be exactly flattered. I mean, I'm not going to say fists would be flying, but it would be.
I can't imagine.
I mean, words would be.
So we've learned some things about you. So you're contrary, and you apparently like brawls.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay, so no, they called him the dumb ox. Did anybody take a guess at this?
Waiting for.
okay.
Adrian says, and Adrian probably knows.
Yeah.
He was big and didn't talk much.
Exactly. Adrian is like star student.
This guy who wrote this huge book didn't talk much.
But imagine you don't have to talk. To be talking a whole lot doesn't mean you're smart.
No. Actually, the people who talk the most are usually not the smartest.
So he was big. He was quiet. He probably was the guy that sat, in the back of the room, and everybody thought was stupid because he didn't say a whole lot. Okay, we got 3 minutes left. And so the students, he's probably the guy that, the students thought was kind of a dork, and so they gave him the dumb ox. Well, his St. Albert the Great has this great quote, and I'm going to mishandle it here, but he said, you call him the dumb ox, but the bellowing of this ox will be heard for centuries to come. So Albert knew that there was something special about Thomas Aquinas, and he's basically said, hey, and it wasn't that he was dumb, obviously. It was just that he was quiet. He probably was thinking about deep things all the time. Okay, let me get through this slide, and I don't know if I can get to the next one or not. Influenced, as I already said, by all these different people, Christian and otherwise. Many people don't know he was a man of deep, deep, deep spiritual and holiness. He said one time, I learn more by placing my head against the tabernacle than I do in books. Okay,
that's
let me
beautiful.
put this back up. He said, I learned more by putting my head against the tabernacle than by books. Okay, so he was a deep, deep man of prayer. And he systematized the theology, as I mentioned ago. Let me see if I can do one more slide. I don't even know what it is. I've got some quotes from popes about why we should study Thomas Aquinas. This is Pope St. John Paul II, of course, of happy memory. The church has been justified in consistently proposing St. Thomas as a master of thought and a model of the right way to do theology. Okay? He also said the magisterium's intention has always been to show how St. Thomas is an authentic model for all who seek the truth. In his thinking, the demands of reason and the power of faith found the most elevated synthesis ever attained by human thought. That is a pretty big statement. And I'm going to end there with, as far as the slides go. And Sissel, was there a comment or?
There's a lot of comments, honestly, but a lot of from Adrian. So Adrian's helping educate everyone. He's actually my secret weapon. If I don't know the answer, I just wait for stall long enough for Adrian to answer.
Adrian feels like he's back in Dominican seminary, okay? Because he probably learned a lot of this stuff. Do you want to? We can close out the show with a few comments. How's that?
Yeah, definitely. He said, angelic warfare confraternity is a Dominican tradition where a Dominican priest blesses a cord like the one that Thomas was given by the angels, and you wear it to preserve you from disordered sexual desire. So that's a random little thing you may not have known.
Yeah.
And he also, I'm going to slaughter the Latin. I did study Latin, but it's probably going to be wrong. So non nisi Te Domini. I'm assuming that was wrong.
I don't know. I don't even know enough to know if you're right. I say you're right.
Okay,
Sissel,
perfect.
You're right.
And I believe the translation of that, if I'm correct, I kind of took a stab at it, and I may have been wrong. Adrian can correct us, but I believe that is none other than you, Lord.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that has to do with the end of his life when he had an ecstatic vision of Christ, and I think that's we got to go, don't we?
Yeah, Diane's going to be like, she's going to take us off in just a second.
The thing about being on social media, you can pretty much go as long as you want, but I want to honor the time because this is going to be an hour show. If you have any comments about the program, if it was too deep, if it wasn't deep enough, if you, we're only scratching the surface. This was an introduction. I didn't even get to a lot of the stuff I'm going to get to, but that'll be next time. I don't know when that's going to be. But I do very much appreciate you watching and being with us and your comments. Adrian, you get the A plus Student Participation Award. And Sissel, you did great. Thank you.
Of course. I didn't have to do much, but my genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
So awesome.
And of course, thanks to Diane Xavier. She did a fabulous job of putting all the graphics up and running all this. So,
absolutely.
Anyways, God bless you. And may St. Thomas Aquinas intercede for us and have a wonderful feast of Our Lady Guadalupe tomorrow. And until next time, this has been Back to the Father as we study our journey of life, focusing on our final end. God bless you, and thank you for watching.